OMG.
Unlocking the magic of your mind.
I was creating experiences that I always thought were impossible for me. I was like, wow.
Mentalist and confidence coach Jordana Borensztajn is on Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers.
That allowed me to achieve a limitless state of mind.
Getting real about life's illusions.
When we're actually outside of our normal habits and routines and processes, we're available to discover a brand new side of who we are.
Finding fun in the face of fear.
That actually feels really good. Comedy is actually cheaper than therapy.
And adding a little sparkle to your day.
How can we make sparkles a spiritual tool?
Sparkles glow. So if we can find the part of life that lights us up, then what an amazing ethos. And I think I tied it in beautifully.
Thank you. You did.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now.
Hi, Jordana. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I am so excited I think we're going to have a really fun conversation today. Something a little bit different. We're going to take a different approach to our mindset and our shifts and how we show up in the world, because I think you're doing it in a very unique and fun way. And I'm just so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me on. And we will have an absolutely joyful and magical chat together.
Yes, magical being the key word. I know you are a mentalist. You're a keynote speaker. You have all these really cool things you've done. You've come from the world of radio. You've been on the stage doing comedy. You have this really big background. But one of the things I really want to touch base with you on is you talked about during COVID, stepping into this whole learning magic and how it made you limitless. And I love that as a concept for changing our mindset. We talk so much about mindset in the spiritual community or the self-help community or the growth community and all these things. And it's always kind of like the same story, but looking at our mindset as something magical and that we can be limitless by seeing the magic in things, I think is brilliant. I think it is fresh and new. And I just would love to get your approach on it and how this works for you.
Well, it actually happened by accident and it was totally unexpected, which, as you would know, is the best way. So I live in Melbourne and we actually had the most lockdowns of any city in the world through COVID. And I painted everything in my apartment in glitter glue and sparkles. Literally, I was making octopuses from toilet paper rolls. I was making birds from the top of tissue paper boxes. I was making turtles from pipe cleaners. Every single creative activity you could even imagine, I did, because I had no kids and I was in my apartment on my own. And it gets to lockdown number 7,599. And I was actually doing a program with Sonia Choquette, and the challenge was try something new and be a beginner. And I'm like, what else can I do? I was already a beginner painter, a beginner chef. I did everything. So I thought, what else is even possible? And in that moment, I was inspired to go, what if I try the impossible, magic? Which seemed so far out of my reach and even harder to do during a pandemic and behind a screen. And I didn't think, should I, shouldn't I? I just jumped in and I went onto YouTube and I just typed in magic for kids. And I got this video came up that showed me how to make a crayon disappear in the air. And I was so amazed at what I was able to actually do. I was so swept up in the illusion and the magic of it that I was just like, this is the best thing I've ever experienced. And then I just went for a deep dive into learning kids' magic effects. And the most incredible thing in terms of mindset is that it got me out of me. I was out of my patterns. I was out of my habits. I was out of my routines. It got me out of my own way to discover brand new possibilities and experiences and a new sense of availability.
Well, I mean, I think you said one of the first things you said is that you didn't think about it. You just did it. And like you said, we both are students of Sonia Choquette. And that is, I think, one of the things that she always is really good at. And she pushes you to do is to step out of your comfort zone. Just don't think about it. Just do it. And I think maybe that's where we need to look at the whole mindset shift is we need to just like have a do mindset. And that doesn't mean that we're controlling the situation. Cause I think a lot of the times we're like, oh, let's just do it. Like we're trying to take control or like figure it out, which is the term that I use a lot. And all my coaches and mentors are always like, stop trying to figure it out. Just go with the flow. But like, just do it. And I think that's what opened you up to so many different possibilities.
100%. I mean, Sonia herself says, don't figure it out. Just go. But it happened like instantaneously. I'd done so much other stuff that I was just like, what else is there? So I had almost exhausted my own creativity to the point where I had nothing. There was no internal chatter left. And because I was doing this amazing program with her, I was like, okay, I got to do something new. What is it? Just go. And it was just life-changing and incredible.
Well, do you think we ever really actually exhaust our creativity? Or do you think when we get to the end of that, we're like, we don't know what to do, something like this will pop into place?
I have experienced once exhausting my creativity because I didn't look after my body. When I wrote my first book, it was actually all about being creative, and I did it in the worst way possible. Didn't know how to look after myself, my rest, my everything. So by the time I finished that, I was like, I have nothing left. But no, I don't think we ever exhaust it because it's a resource inside of us. So it's a eternally flowing resource. I think it's just about how do we actually connect with it and how do we nurture ourselves enough to be able to keep coming back and finding new inspiration.
Well, so like, what was it about magic that really like switched your mindset and like made you feel like you could do anything?
Because I experienced a brand new side of myself, and because I was in essence creating, and these moments where I was not there. It was not the Jordana I knew. It wasn't my normal habits. It wasn't my normal processes. It wasn't my normal thinking patterns, because none of that exists in magic. And I was creating experiences that I always thought were impossible for me. I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. So that was the mindset shift of me not actually being there and being able to create these experiences that I never thought I could actually do. That allowed me to achieve a limitless state of mind.
Do you find yourself using that limitless state of mind now in other ways in your life? And how do you
actually teach it? I actually teach it. I do keynote. I actually teach it. I do keynote presentations and give people the experience of awe and wonder, and explain that when we're actually outside of our normal habits and routines and processes, we're available to discover a brand new side of who we are.
So what is available? Like, where are the limits? Like, how do we push past it? Is it like you can just change your life? Is it you can be something new? Is it like you can, create money out of thin air? Like, what is it that we can really experience by opening our mind to this?
The fact that we can constantly discover new things about who we are and what we're capable of. That was the biggest lesson. I was like, hang on a second, I can do magic. Hang on a second, I can do mentalism. Hang on a second, I can actually create experiences that don't just blow my mind, but actually create and co-create these incredible, unforgettable experiences for others. Like that is so profound.
And you brought this into your comedy too, because it seems like in general, you're just approaching life from a very creative, happy place, which I think, we need more of today. There's a lot of heaviness. Yeah. And so by bringing these like seemingly childish type things, joy, comedy, like silliness into our lives, we're helping to build a more well-rounded and more full spirit, I feel like. And it seems like that's what you're doing, is you're tapping into these things that will probably, interest you maybe as a child, or, your spirit wanted to feel. And then it like opens up such a whole new world to you.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a giant child, as evident by the stuff that I was creating in my apartment. But the most amazing thing is that like what I've learned in creating magical experiences with others is that we never lose the capacity to play. We choose to stop playing. That's one of the biggest lessons that I like to share. So in creating magical experiences, it's allowing people to reconnect with their inner child and their spirit in a way that is actually, hang on a second, I'm giving myself permission and it's okay. And I'm 40 or I'm 50 or I'm 60 and it's a corporate setting and I'm allowed to experience this right now. So that level of permission is phenomenal. And I mix, as you said, I used to do comedy and I still do comedy, but like I bring comedy, I bring magic, I bring mentalism, I bring it all together. I teach in that way and I don't follow any rules. And there's a lot of, do this in magic or do this in mentalism. And I just bring it all together because in essence, it's all the same thing. How can I open your heart? How can I bring joy? How can I make you laugh while you're learning? Like it's all the same thing. It's just how do we actually get there?
Well, why do you think it is that we like stop playing? Why don't we give ourselves permission to live life to the fullest by playing? We just like stop.
Sadly, rules, other people's expectations, the matrix that we live in, like there's just the news, the media, that like there's so much around us that we listen to rather than, as you would know, listening to our intuition.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love that you said that. You said a couple big words there, the matrix that we live in, which I do believe we're living in some sort of matrix, but rules and like what other people think. I mean, there are all these rules that we've all somehow, for some reason, have subscribed to, and we go about them. But like, who made these rules? Like, why do we follow along with these rules and don't follow? Like, you even said that when you started doing the magic, there's so many rules about it. And you're like, no, I'm going to throw them out. Like, it's really amazing when we can step past those rules. And I'm not talking about like harming our neighbors, like the societal rules that keep us, safe, but more of like, why do we have to like do it this way, this way, this way, or live life this way, this way, this way? So many of us do that and we find ourselves unfulfilled because we're not actually following our true path.
Yeah. There's a lot of rules I've discovered in magic. It's like, a lot of mentalists are quite serious and a lot of magicians, there's a lot of rules within the industry. And I'm just like, I'm going to do magic and I'm going to do mentalism and I'm going to bring it all in with comedy and I'm going to do it in my unique way, which is totally unconventional. But I'm just like, I'm going to do what feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
what is mentalism actually compared to magic?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you unless you want to be a mentalist. It's more mind reading and body language, and so magic can be anything. It can be an illusion. It can be the big scale stage stuff that you would see. It can be fire stuff. Like there's a lot of different forms of magic. Mentalism is traditionally, if I had to say in 2 keywords, mind reading. So I love it because it's the real wow factor. I mean, there's a lot of wow factor, but for me personally, I respond to mentalists and go, how did you do that? Like, how on earth did you do that? And because for me, I like to, when I do it, bring in messages of there is more to life than our 5 senses. We connect in different ways. So I see a lot of possible educational pieces within that in terms of being able to tie in effects with some really cool spiritual messages. So that's what I really love.
I love that, combining that spiritual world and like there's something beyond this with the stage show of the magic. But like literally, if you think about it, we are all living in an illusion. We are all living in our own mentalist state. We are all creating a perception of our own making, right?
It's so true. I love that. Normally people say we're living in our own filter or we're living in our own reality. You're like, we're living in our own mentalism state.
Well, when you're saying that, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, we are literally, if we are the creators of our own reality. Like we are living in this time zone. I mean, I'm getting really into right now quantum physics. And so like, I'm like thinking about, and I don't know anything about it. I'm not even close to a scientist. It just fascinates me, this whole like concept of the matrix or time and space and like what is really real. But like, that's exactly what the mentalist side is doing, is it's taking you into that other dimension, it sounds like, which is really, really fascinating. And then to bring that world into the here and now, it just will allow us to open ourselves up to so much more.
Which is so funny because most magicians and mentalists are not spiritual. Like historically there's a very clear divide between spiritualists and spiritualism based on the history, and it's a very long road, but yes, it's a very unique and different way to view things. And there is a lot of magicians that wouldn't connect the two at all, and then there are some that do. So
is it looked down upon when you're like delivering messages and teaching about spirituality when you're doing the magical magic and mentalist work?
Do you know what? I don't perform for magicians. So I perform for audiences that are mostly corporate, that probably haven't seen magic since they were 3 at a party, that are just all of a sudden having a magical or mentalism experience that is brand new. If I was doing it in the magic scene, it would be a very different kettle of fish.
You know, I experienced up close magic quite a bit when I was living in LA, because I would go to the Magic Castle and some really fascinating people came through there. And it is a sense of awe. And it's like you have to suspend your belief and allow yourself to be transported into these tricks or these illusions or whatever is going on. And I think we need to actually bring that more into our life in general. We have to be able to suspend our belief about anything in life, suspend our beliefs. Like that's, I think, where that magical mindset really can help us. That once we can suspend what we think is happening or what we think ought to happen, we can really open ourselves up to possibilities of miracles in our life.
Yeah, 100%. In order for me to actually learn and continue to learn new magic effects, the principles were curiosity, openness, not needing to know the answer, like all of the stuff that we know are spiritual principles. For me, in my learning experience, were principles that were foundational in being able to discover new possibilities and a new part of who I could actually become. So they're very aligned. So like a magician's mindset for me is that openness. It's wonder. It's a sense of, I actually don't know what's going to happen, but I'm totally available to where this effect is going to end up. And even when I'm learning a new effect and I know how it actually works, I still choose to view it from a sense of wonder. And a really important thing that I've learned is that I can tell a lot about a person by the way they respond to a magic effect. So we either go right brain or left brain. In my experience, we either go right brain or left brain. So we either go right brain, how did you do that? I don't need to know the answer. I'm just going to stay in awe and wonder. That was amazing. Or we go left brain, which is, that was amazing. How'd you do it? Do it again. I need to know how. So I can tell in a second about how someone lives most of their life by the way that they will respond to a magical mentalism effect. It's fascinating. So I will always ask the left brainers in the room, I'll do this effect and I'll say, left brainers, please reserve that part of you and please suspend that, because you'll get the most out of the next hour with me if you stay in a space of wonder.
That is so fascinating. And I really do think that is such a huge lesson for us to learn in general, because it's really funny that you're saying this. I literally had a conversation yesterday with I had 2 conversations yesterday, one with a biologist and one with like a holistic doctor, therapist, like both very science-minded people, but they've had to suspend their left brain to this sense of wonder and something more. And the thing that they both were talking about is this possibility or this concept of curiosity, how becoming curious opens you up to so much more. And that's exactly what you're saying with your magic. And it's starting to see, it's almost like a trend in it doesn't matter if it's like magic. It doesn't matter if it's performance. It doesn't matter if it's science. That curiosity leads us to so many different things.
Curiosity is essential, and that's what we lose. I think that's the heart of what we actually lose. That's what we need to bring back, because, when we're curious, we're actively encouraging ourselves to see things from a different perspective. So naturally, we're going to find more possibilities and be available to more, because we're forcing ourselves to see things in a brand new way.
Well, and what was even explained to me when it came to with the scientist, she was saying when it comes to curiosity, you lose all fear. That curiosity and fear do not exist in the same plane. You can't be curious about something and fearful of something. So it's almost like a primal instinct that talking about these concepts, even spirituality or whatever, like these are all very primal instincts that we all have within us. So that to be curious about something, but also not have to know the outcome, I think that's the trick. So how do you go there to allow yourself just to be like, I don't know, but I'm still curious?
Number one, trust. I trust that I will get to a better place than where I think I'll get to. But I think that experience, like when I'm learning a magic effect, I don't do it with the view of, I want to know how this ends. It's like every single part of the journey is the experience. So the journey in whatever area of life is going to be way more rich, and we're going to be way more immersed and way more present when we don't need to know where it lands and where it ends.
That is a challenge. I mean, that is one of my biggest challenges as like a controlling, maybe that's a left brain. I don't know what it is. It's like, you want to know how it ends. A lot of us do. We can't suspend that curiosity, but we have to have that trust and faith to allow ourselves to know that everything is going to be all right. And I think it's more of like a protection mechanism that we do. We want to control an outcome or know an outcome so that we aren't blindsided, or so that something bad doesn't happen. But when we can allow ourselves to really just open up to that wonder and just like, no, like you said, trust. I think trust is key.
Yeah. And I also think it comes down to, for me personally, passion. So if I'm creating something, let's magic aside, if I'm actually creating something and I don't know where it's going to end up, but I'm loving every single second of it, then I don't need to know where it's going to end, because the process itself is the journey.
So it's really like we need to find things that bring us joy and creative
100%.
happiness within ourselves, because then that takes away all these worries or fears, because we just immerse ourselves so much in whatever we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, one of the biggest lessons that I learned from magic was that when I find an activity that makes me so joyful, like magic did, I'm so immersed in the experience that my inner critic couldn't come in, didn't know how to enter. So that all of the old stuff that would say, you can't do this. Like I wrote a kid's book in 12 weeks, which an illustrated children's book, never dreamed of doing it, never thought I could do it. But I was able to, because I was so immersed in the experience. And that is what, actually coming back to what you asked before, that is what made me feel limitless. Because I was having such a joyful time and so present that no old habits or routines could come in and interrupt my pursuit of the joy. And I think that is at the core of everything.
That is. I mean, obviously you love like color, you love joy, you love happy things. And when we can go there, I mean, it quiets that ego. It quiets that critic, that it's like, that's our instinct, is to go back into that negative or that critic. And it's like, how do we stop that? And how do we make finding the joy more of the go-to versus the critic?
Yeah. For me, it was magic, and I think it's anything that joy and creativity obviously is very different for everyone, but the core characteristic is that it makes us connected to our spirit. It allows us to just disconnect from the external world, and time becomes completely irrelevant.
So it's really, you're just tapping into your spirit. Your spirit loves the fun.
Loves the fun. Love fun. Everything needs to be fun. Life needs to be fun. In every single moment, we have to have fun. It's the most important thing. That's why we're here.
But so many of us don't experience the fun. Why not?
If I had the answer to that, so many problems would be able to be solved. I think we take things a lot of us take things way too seriously. And even I have. There are moments in time where, I got trapped in the cycles, in the routines, in the anxiety, in the overthinking. Like, it's very easy to get stuck in our own patterns. For me, it's like patterns. It's like what patterns held me back, and then how can I become aware of them, and then what can I do in my life to be able to break them so that I have less and less that limits me from being able to experience the joy with no fear and no time restrictions. And
Well, you keep talking about like routines and patterns. I mean, it sounds like it's like throw those out the door if we can learn
Throw
anything.
them, chuck them. That's the answer.
Chuck them out the door. Yeah. And just like literally live your life like going with the flow is the answer to finding more joy and happiness in your life and more fulfillment.
Yes, because, and I can only speak from my own experience, but my patterns and my routines, they feel comfortable and they feel like they're good, but they're not. They weren't for me at all. They were just done for so many years that they felt like the more comfortable thing to do. Magic, nothing existed. Everything was new. Then therefore I could create whatever I wanted.
Yeah. Well, also it's comfortable. And so to do something new, you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, which
exactly.
obviously.
And you have to be fearless in terms of I did not care what anybody thought. I did not care. I decided I wanted to bring it into the corporate speaking. You know, no one's like it wasn't done and I just didn't care. I knew that my friends were judging me because I was doing magic. Some of my friends and like, you know, viewed it as like, oh, that's a 4-year-old thing or that's a 5-year-old thing or that's silly or that's stupid. And I was like, I don't care, bring me joy. So I was in a state where I was just like, I do not care at all what anyone else's projection or view is, because this is filling me up in a way that like is just exceptional.
So how do you get to that state? Because a lot of us care. I would say a majority of people care what people think, especially the people close to us. Like if your friends are saying, oh, that's stupid. I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I would.
Well, they didn't say it, but I knew it.
Oh, okay. They didn't say it, but like still, like, how do you know? Okay. So you know it. Like, how do you just be like, who cares? Like, how do you get that essence about you?
Because I was connected to the joy that it gave me was overflowing, and the inspiration that it gave me was far superior to even trying to think about someone else's opinion.
So joy supersedes it all. Joy 100%. Supersedes it all.
100%. And also I have been very I am very creative and I've tried 1,000 different things. So I've never at one point, you know, even when I started comedy, I've done career pivots, I've done shifts, I've done changes. I've always gone with what feels right. I've never thought, oh my God, what's someone else going to think of me? Maybe I shouldn't do this. And like, it's never been a big block for me. So I'm lucky like that.
So do you feel like you've just been intuitively guided to try these different things? I mean, they're all connected in a way, but they're not. So like, has it just been kind of like this intuitive path that's like, okay, I'm shifting today and it's now going to be comedy and like, you're just so tuned into that you know how to read it and pivot when it feels right?
I wish that was the right answer. I wish I could just say yes. Namaste from the top of my mountain. Everything was intuitively guided. Which
that would be wonderful,
could say,
right?
Yeah, I know. I definitely would say 100%, but like I didn't always know that was the case. You know what I mean? So like I actually got into comedy because I went out on a really bad date, which pushed me into a career in comedy. So every cloud has a silver lining. I didn't plan for that at all. Turned out to be literally one of the best things I've ever experienced in my entire life. So none of what I've done was actually planned, but now looking back, it all makes complete, beautiful, creative, sequential, like connected sense because everything feeds into each other. But yeah, I wish I could say it was, I've been intuitively aware for my entire life. And but yes, I have always followed that feeling, and whatever feels good, I go with. And that is intuition. I didn't always know that was how to refer to it or connect to it, but 100%.
Isn't that funny how like intuition almost shows up as like 20/20 hindsight? Like, you know, we think we can read it. We think we can follow it. We think we could actually be in tune with it. But in reality, it's just kind of following these random little feelings. And you look back and you're like, oh no, that was my intuition leading me the whole time. Like no matter how much we learn or how much we tap in or how much we think we know, like it's always in the reverse that we're looking back at it going, oh, that was our intuition telling us what to do, where to go, or how this was going to play out.
Yeah. Oh, that was our intuition. And I didn't listen to it. Oof.
A million times. I've done that a million times myself. So like, yeah, with your intuition, I'm curious, like, what was this bad date? Because I've heard you talk about this now in your things. Like, how did this turn you into comedy?
So I went out, I was almost 30. Most of my friends were in relationships or married, and I didn't really want a date. And I went out on the date, and it was a brunch, and it was terrible. He was drunk, and he was drunk the night before. So he comes hungover, and he was slurring, and we sat down for a brunch. So it was a long commitment, and it was like we ended up arguing, and it was just horrendous. And I left going, oh my God, I'm going to be a lonely cat lady for the rest of my life. OMG. And so I called one of my friends, and I couldn't even get words out. All I could do was like imitate like the slurring that was coming out of his mouth. And so I'm imitating, and by the end she's laughing, and I was like, I feel a little bit better. And then I called another friend, and I added in enthusiasm and exaggeration. By the end, we're both crying hysterically. And I was like, hang on a second. That actually feels really good. Comedy is actually cheaper than therapy and amazingly healing. So then I just dived in, comedy books, audiobooks, training, workshops, and started to actually write as a therapeutic tool, and then very quickly just started to write about everything else. And then I started to do 5-minute sets, and then went very quickly to a full comedy festival show. Again, not listening to any rules. Like I went from 7 minutes to a 55-minute show when most people need to do 5-minute spots for a certain amount of years. And I'm like, nah, this feels right. So I'm just going to move. So yeah, it was amazing. And again, I felt so much fear, like next level fear in comedy and getting up on stage and trying to remember everything. And the fear was exceptional, but I was driven by the passion that allowed me to actually get through those unbelievably challenging moments, which now I use to teach, and is, incredible.
So the passion helps you push through that fear, but it sounds like, I mean, can comedy really change the trajectory of this world? Like 100%. You said, it's better than therapy. Like if we can laugh, I almost wonder if listening to you talk about it, it's kind of like the scientist was saying to me how curiosity and fear can't live in the same plane. And, I've heard that with like darkness and light, can't exist together. Is it almost like comedy and like sadness, or comedy and hate, or like comedy and hurt can't really exist at the same time?
Yeah. Well, the best comedy, and this is a lesson I learned very early on, but comedy comes from truth and pain are the two primary sources. So when we can learn to, and when I could learn to take something that was painful or a situation that was undesirable and turn it into a joke, it was so profoundly healing. Because if you can be up there on stage laughing at something that would normally bring you down and make you feel sad and bring you pain, then, number one, I'm okay because we're all laughing at this together. And number two, people are connecting with this because it's actually speaking to something in them. So it actually normalizes something that can bog us down and we feel like we're on our own with. So it was incredibly healing for me. And I did use it as a healing modality at the start. And then I was like, I just want to do social media comedy. But yes, it's very, very healing to this day.
Well, you said the key word there is you're sharing your story, and that helps you connect with other people. And that's what I always talk about, is when we can be vulnerable and share our story, that allows us to connect with others so that we feel like we're not so alone in a situation. So whether it is something painful and you're laughing at it, you're laughing with others, it not only does it like help you release the pain of the situation because you're seeing other people connect with you, but also you're giving someone else a lifeline to say like, okay, she went through that too, and I can handle it also. Like it's such a connector. And as we talked about before we even jumped on, I come from the television and entertainment world. Like comedy is an art form in itself. People I think comedy is easy, and I find that most comedians I've worked with have a lot of painful things in their life. And, the comedy helps them release that. And it is actually, comedy is a much harder medium, in my opinion, than drama. Anytime I've ever written anything for comedy, it is a different thing. Drama is easy. Comedy takes courage.
Yeah. Lots of courage, because you're taking your vulnerabilities and turning, for me anyway, I took the things that made me feel vulnerable and made me feel like they were my weaknesses and turned them into comedic points of strength and power and connection. So yeah, it's amazing. I think everyone has, as Judy Carter was my first comedy coach, everyone's got 5 minutes of comedy in them. And I think everyone should go and do a stand-up course, because you discover that, hang on a second, I can actually develop a level of resilience here and extra talents that I might not at the moment believe I'm capable of. I also think that everyone can become a magician, but that's a different thing.
But you even think about it when you're connecting with anyone, like the best times you remember or have for the most part are the times that you're laughing with someone. So like that is a key to connection in itself, is just finding those moments where you can tap into that comedy, you can laugh, and then, now let's bring in the magic, and then you can suspend your reality and wow, you'll be entertained your whole life. I mean, that would be amazing, right?
I know. So yeah, to be able to mix them all together is amazing. But I do think that everyone has 5 minutes, as Judy says, and everyone I meet that's like, oh my God, comedy. I'm like, go and do a stand-up course.
But that requires you to stand up and get vulnerable. And that's where I think most of us won't do it.
Yes.
Because it takes courage for you to do that. It takes courage for you to stand up and get vulnerable. It's one thing for you to talk to your friends about a date and then all of a sudden hear them laughing, but then to think about like, how did you take that next step, and say, get a little bit more serious about like what you're going to talk about. And all of a sudden, you're getting really vulnerable on stage, I'm imagining.
Yes, but it comes back to the point of being immersed in the experience and not being struck by or limited by the outcome. So I was so excited about learning stand-up and learning how to write and learning about comedy theory and comedy principles. And I was so immersed in that experience that I didn't think about being on stage until I was actually on stage going, oh my God, I can't do this. So I'm talking about like my first workshop that ended in our first 5-minute set or 3-minute set, whatever it was. I was so excited about the process and about joke writing and about coming up with and like all of the creative juices. And that was so exciting that I did not think about the fear that I would feel until literally they're like, and now I'd like to welcome to the stage Jordana Borensztajn. And every time, please not me. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? Why did I do this? And then, so I don't get trapped in that. I just focus on the love of the creative expansion. And that's what drives me through it.
Well, obviously you stay present in the moment too, by not thinking about what's about to come. You're staying present with like, I'm just enjoying this right now. And then all of a sudden you're on stage with the mic in your hand. And then it's like,
and then I lose it. And then I just, and then I'm out of there, but yes.
And then you black out and it's like, okay, what did I just say? I don't know, but they're laughing, so it's good.
Do you know, it's so funny because I look back on some of the earliest experiences and was so disconnected and was so not present and was learning everything by rote learning, which I would not recommend at all, but that's how I was doing it. And I remember there was a spot that I did in New York Comedy Club, and I was very early on in my career. I wrote all of my jokes as bullet points on my hand, and I get up and I say my first joke and I've got spotlight on me, and then I can't remember anything. I can't remember any joke I'd ever written. I look down at my hands, there's a giant smudge mark, and because I was sweating so hard. And I'm like, what am I going to do? There's 4 minutes left. What am I going to do? Like, I could not remember anything. Such a disconnect between the brain and the body. And I just looked over to a table of my friends, and one of my friends was sitting there, and I just locked eyes with her and started to breathe, and it came back. And I have so many of those experiences from the early days where I wasn't present. But I was just, so committed to doing the comedy that, I didn't think about what's going to happen if. And I think that is the most limiting thing. If we're limited by thinking about the negative outcome or the forecast of what could go wrong, then of course we're not going to do anything. So I don't get there until I'm there.
Right. Well, I mean, I am so there with you, because in anything I do, it's like I know a lot of people will prep and plan and have all these questions laid out, or even when I'm writing books, it's like people will like have their outline and this and that. I find personally, if I just show up and do the work, it always turns out better. Like, you cannot prep for everything. And if you can get present in the moment, the words are going to come to you. The questions are going to come to you. The sound, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, the music is going to come to you, versus it's just like anything in life. We can't script it. And it's never going to turn out the way you want it to. So like
says the,
had that whole
says the
thing
person that's come from a background of scripting. We can't script it.
Well, you can't script it. I don't script these conversations for a reason because I just think.
Oh, hang on, wait. So does that mean the notes that I'm reading at the moment didn't come from you? Did they come from someone else?
They came from someone else. Someone else beamed them to you.
Oh gosh.
So be careful of what you're saying. No, but don't you find, I mean, even just thinking about it, think of like, I don't know if you've seen Anchorman, but they read anything in the script, you don't know what you're even saying. And I just think it's so much better when we can show up, be present, and just allow what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, 100%. That takes experience to know that you can actually do it. It takes a giant plunge into the unknown to have your first experience of going, I can do this.
Mm. Is it experience or is it just showing up and connecting as a human? Like I find that sometimes like some of the most scripted people or people that are so planned out, and this is not to say I'm not planned out in other areas of my life, but in things that I'm passionate about, like my work, I don't show up planned out in that way. And I find that people that don't seem to be present. And it's almost like you don't connect on a real level. Like it's just almost like like your words are bouncing off of a wall versus, you've had those conversations, I'm sure, with people where it's just kind of like, they're not there. They're saying what's right, but they're not actually like conversing with you. And that's what I find 100%. The best is and that to me would be just like comedy or just like magic, because it's an interactive medium. No matter what, you might be performing, but you're expecting that back and forth with your audience.
Yeah, 100%. Again, which comes down to trust as well, because there's a lot of comedians and a lot of magicians that would be super scripted. A lot of magic can be very scripted, whereas I don't go down that route at all.
Yeah.
But comedy's very scripted. That's what we don't know. A comedy, like every single, there's a lot of comedy that's just intuitive and in the moment, like all of the stage and the crowd work that you'll see comedians do up front. That's not scripted at all, which is why audiences love it more, because we actually love comedy that is spontaneous more than we're like, okay, you've actually pre-written that joke. I always found that in my experience as an audience member and in my experience as a comedian. But a lot of stand-up that we look at and go, oh my God, they're so funny. How did they think of that joke? It's actually scripted to the T, like each word, each beat. It's a real art form.
Mm-hmm. So you do script all your stuff. You don't go up and just like wing it.
No. Now it depends what I'm doing. If I'm pre-prepared, if I'm crafting customized jokes for an audience, which is what I do, I will rewrite, but I won't stay strictly to script. I'll just make sure that I've got the essence of the punch. But there's more, my greatest strength now is the in the moment stuff. My best stuff comes from the in the moment, spontaneous, calling out what's happening in the room, acknowledging the awkward, which is one of the principles that I teach. Banter, crowd work, like that's my comedic strength, is just trusting my spirit and going with the comedy in the moment, not the pre-planned stuff, even though that's good because I've done it for a while, but great,
So what's acknowledging the awkward?
Oh, okay. So if something is happening in the room and a speaker doesn't actually call it out, all of the audience is going to be drawn away and their attention is going to be laser focused on, oh my God, did that glass just break, or did that plate just smash, or did that mobile phone just go off? And I teach this when I teach public speaking. As a speaker, we can get so concerned and focused on ourselves. I want my scripting to be good, or I want to make sure they like me, or I need to make sure that I fit this in, or my slide deck, or me, that we can skip over those parts because we're like, I don't want that I don't want that to distract me from where I need to go. But you're losing your entire audience in those 30 seconds or a minute where they're talking to each other going, did a mobile phone just go off, or did a plate just smash, or whose glass was that? So acknowledging the awkward is going, okay, what just happened in the room and how can I become present to that and speak to it so that we're all on the same page? Because that's where the connection comes from, and that's where the depth of the connection comes from for us to go, okay, whose mobile phone was that? amazing. Did you not get the memo to turn it off before you came in? Or whose mobile phone was that? I love this point where only one person leaned down and everyone else is looking. Like that brings so much joy and so much more like connection. And then everyone in the audience is going, okay, that speaker is with us. They see us. They hear us. We're in this journey together, not like they're just doing what they're doing and we're doing what we're doing. So yeah, it's an interesting point that I've seen and I've observed, and I think is super important for anyone who's presenting.
So to have that shared experience so that you guys are all in it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So do you ever feel like you get to turn off the performance? Because I feel like you have a lot of parts of you that like to perform. Do you ever feel like you get to just like shut it down?
I don't know what you're talking about. Are you asking, do you ever get quiet and do you ever not talk a lot? The answer is yes.
That was not what I was. No, you just have such a big, I know. You just have such big energy. I'm wondering, like, you know, are you always like reading the room and picking up on that energy of other people? Like, and do you feel like you have to perform, or do you feel like you can just kind of, you know, sit back and watch what happens? Like, I mean, I feel like you're such a charge, an energetic charge.
Yeah. I definitely, it depends what context. So before an event, I'll always go and read the room and I'll look and I'll do a vibe check and I'll see, okay, how are they connecting with each other? What are they going to respond to? Because I like to feel how much will be required to warm them up. What do I start with? What do I open with? How much interactivity can we have? But no, what you see is what you get. I don't know how to not be anything other than like high vibe and high energy. Like if you said to me, can you just tone it down a little bit because we like to have a bit more low energy on our podcast, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that.
I would never. I love it. I love the energy and I love the performance, and I know anyone listening does too. So with that, how do we get to see you? How do we get your books? How do we watch your comedy? How do we follow along with you and your brilliant journey?
That is an amazing question. JordanaB.com.au. Thank you for asking. Also, YouTube, Jordana Borensztajn, where I share a lot of public speaking tips in a really, really fun way. So I help people turn their fear into fun so that they can be their most authentic, beautiful version of themselves. And I offer coaching and online programs. So please connect with me and hit me up, because every single thing that I teach and do, the essence is fun and joy. And sparkles. Sparkles are important too.
So what can we take? How can we make sparkles a spiritual tool? How do we make sparkles a spiritual lesson for our listeners, just to leave us off with?
Sparkles glow. So the essence is that there is a shimmer and there is a shine. So if we can find the part of life that lights us up, the part of ourself that feels alive and alight when we're doing activities, and if we can seek and discover the joy and the beauty in things, then what an amazing ethos. And I think I tied it in beautifully.
Thank you. You did. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, Jordana, for such a fun conversation. I just love everything you're doing. Thank you.
Aw, thank you so much for having me. You've been an absolute joy. So I can't wait until I come to America and we do your first ever stand-up course and set together. What do you reckon?
Oh my goodness.
Look at your face. Oh my God.
I know. The fear. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I would love, yes, let's do something in person, but like, oh my goodness. I don't think, like I said, comedy is hard. You're brilliant. Comedians are brilliant. And that's a feat. So it's not easy.
I've got you. I'm your glittery, sparkly cheerleader. I've got you. I'll carry you through.
Oh my goodness. I almost feel like you're going to just show up on the doorstep and be like, okay, we're going.
Yeah, just don't give me your address. Otherwise, I'll be there.
Not going to happen. Too bad we know people in common that probably have my address, but no, not going to tell you.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Jordana Borensztajn, for joining me in such a fun, enlightening, magical, and brilliant conversation all about comedy, mentalism, and everything we could do with our intuition, suspending our reality, and really allowing ourselves to find that awe and wonder in the world. If you want to follow along with Jordana and anything that she's doing, or check out her comedy, I'll put all the information of how to get in touch with her in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.